Hello and welcome. It's Alexa Linton here, your host for the Whole Horse podcast. We're here to look at all the ways that the horse industry is changing before our very eyes in very cool, very amazing ways. And we're chatting with the people at the forefront of that change, the professionals, the trainers, the body workers, the researchers that are helping our lives with horses become better and better. Thanks for being here. I love that you're here and listening and learning. And if you ever have a guest that you want to suggest or a topic that you want to hear, just let me know and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. It means a lot. And I look forward to seeing you for season 4. Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's Alexa Linton here, and you're here for season 4 of the Whole Horse podcast. And today on the podcast, I have with me someone I'm very excited to be chatting with. I have Susan Fay here, who is the author of Sacred Spaces. And I'm so glad you're here with us today, Susan. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. What a lovely conversation I think we're going to have. Just I got a good feeling for this. So
I do too, absolutely. And I know we were chatting a little bit before our time together about kind of what you're working on lately, and I can't wait to dive in. And I know probably most people have heard your name now and your book name in various ways through Warwick's podcast and through spaces in the horse world. But I'd love you to share with my listeners just a little bit about you and your journey here up until this point.
my journey has been quite different, I guess. Lots of different things happened in my life, and I've gone on different paths through it. And I started out as a young girl in the mountains of Colorado, where I grew up, and we didn't have very much TV, or our phone was actually an 8-party line, so there were 8 people on 8 people in the general vicinity of where we live. We were all on the same phone line, so you didn't spend a lot of time on the phone either. But what it allowed me is a lot of free time, a lot of thinking time. And my parents were both teachers, so they really stressed that whole, go do some different things, get it different experiences, read a lot, go outside, do things outside, build things. So do all these different activities. And I'm really thankful for that now, because I think it gave me that ability to kind of go, oh, I want to see everything. I want to understand everything, and I want to go out and learn, and I want to be touching and feeling and with the earth and all those kind of things. And so where did I go after that is I went to study in school, and I studied environmental science. So I got master's degree in environmental science, and that was wonderful. And it was outside, but I still always had the horses in the background, and I was doing that. And they're a bigger draw for me, but my parents kept saying you can never make a living off of horses. So, I believe I bought into that whole idea. So fast forward, I ended up marrying a guy, and he went to medical school in Philadelphia. So I suffered for 4 years there, and I told him, well, if I do that, then we get a ranch at the end of this. We're going to move back to Colorado and have a ranch. And he loved the outdoors too, so we ended up there. And that's kind of where I began to form a lot of the ideas I had about how to train horses. And it was on the ranch, just quiet time again, interacting for most of the part just with animals all day long. And what an idyllic life. Here I am ranching, I'm putting up hay, I'm irrigating, I'm doing all those really physical things, and then I'm training horses. And it was just so perfect. And I was studying a lot of that time with the natural horsemanship people, so I really went one-on-one and learned all that going on. But then at some point I realized it wasn't the whole answer. It wasn't doing for me what I thought it would. And I found that the horses I had didn't really need to do round pinning. I was raising horses, and I would interact with them all day, and it seemed like a necessary part of the training that I had to go run them around, because they already have a connection with me. So everything I did with training was against what everybody told me to do. And I was by myself out there and I would have to start these young horses, and I'm like, I got to be really careful. I got to make sure they really are calm and gentle, and that I can just get on and go. Um, and it's insane now when I think of it that I was starting young horses. I was completely alone out at the ranch. Um, but I never had a problem. I would
Mhm.
go slowly. That was part of my thing. I went slowly. I didn't have a lot of time, so I spent a little bit of time, 10, 15 minutes with one horse, 10, 15 minutes when they were babies here and there, and taught them different things. And then all of a sudden, when it was time to ride, it was just an easy transition into just riding.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
um, I thought everybody did it that way. And then at one time I went to be with some friends and we were talking and they were telling me these horror stories about all the things that their horses had done to them and these behaviors that were coming up. And I was clueless. I had no idea that would actually happen. It was horrifying to me that people would have those kind of negative experiences. And I thought, I haven't had any of those. And um, fast forward again, I was showing horses and uh, I started to realize that I didn't have what it took to show. Not that I really wanted to, but I realized I was so nervous when I went to show.
Mm.
And none of my instructors could help me with that. And so I started again being from where I went, researching and reading and looking for things. And I was drawn into sports psychology and mental training. And how our mind works, and I thought maybe there's something that can help me with my showing. But as I went through those programs and the processes of everything with that they teach you in the mental training and sports psychology, I realized my horses were getting even better.
Mm.
And so again, another fast forward, I get divorced and I realize what I want to do is go and help people understand these pieces that I got from the psychology world and all that. And so I got my PhD in psychology and I got it in with an emphasis in research because
Mm.
I'm very interested in the research aspect of everything. So I went into neurology and all these different areas of psychology. And then I came out and decided, okay, let me show this to the horse world. What I found, because I'm not seeing it out there in a really big way, and
Mhm.
it wasn't long before I realized that wasn't what I should be doing. I got the big wall. I always got the eye rolls, and the big wall. Like, who are you, and what are you talking about? You're just a academe someone from academia telling us what to do, and I couldn't say, but you don't understand, I've come through the whole process of training horses and all that, and that's
Mhm.
why I went the academia to find out some more answers to questions that I had, and I felt like I had become more rounded in my ability to train and teach and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't like I was getting a whole lot of interest. And then
Mhm.
through my research, I came into the thing like, oh, we're all energy, and here's how energy works, and it's somewhere out there, and most people think it's some mystical thing. And through my research, it's like, no, it's not. It's who we are and what we do, and we can measure these things. And so I kept thinking for a long time, I need to get some kind of devices so I can show people that here's what's happening and here's how your horse reacts when you're thinking certain things and when your emotions are a certain way, when you're breathing a certain way. But
Mm.
it didn't work out that way. I've told this story before where I went to these neuroscientists. They were true brilliant ladies who were known throughout the world as the best neuroscientists, and they did neurofeedback on people, and they had this sophisticated office. I went to meet with them to tell them what I was going to do with the energy, and they were like, "Oh, that's great." And then I was waiting for them to give me some suggestions on what technology I could use so I could show people what was happening.
Right.
But after I explained everything, they said, "That's a great idea, except don't use any technology." And I thought it was so strange coming from these two women that use technology every day in their office. And I went away going, I don't know what to do. And I sat on that for a while. And it was the best thing anybody could have told me because we have the most brilliant, wonderful biofeedback device ever invented called the horse. And it has instantaneous feedback for us. And we don't have to go to years of study on how to read and interpret the data that's coming out. We can just take maybe, like for me, when I teach somebody, it's a day and they go, oh, I didn't know any of that meant something. And then they do, and then they can interpret.
Yep.
So, that's kind of been my journey in a kind of long about way. I guess I went on
Mm,
about that, but um, there is a lot of science behind what I do, and there's also some things I cannot explain why
yeah.
they happen. And that's
Mm,
where I've talked in my book about you have to just go with faith. If I see it a bunch of times, then I know we just maybe can't measure it yet, but something is definitely happening. Okay.
mm.
So,
Beautiful. Well, as someone who's been practicing energy medicine for like a while, I I get that part where it's like you can't necessarily like prove it with all these things yet, but you see something happen over and over and over and over again. And, the horse has kind of told me, like, if it happens 100 times like this, it's probably real in some way.
exactly.
Oh, okay. Like it really shifted that sense in me. So I love that. And I read, I think it was in the very first chapter of your book about the horse that got stuck in the cattle guard.
Right.
And I just got shivers,
Wow.
reading that story. And the sense of you kind of having this aha of like, there is more happening here than meets the eye.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's an incredible story. Can you share a little bit about that moment and some of the maybe what you've distilled since that time?
Um, that was such an incredible, and if you haven't read the book, it was a really, really cold day, and I had a ranch up in northwestern Colorado, and boy, in the winters it gets super cold, and I had put all the horses away and fed them, and then my neighbor called next door, and she had said, your horse is stuck in the cattle guard, one of your horses, and I thought it was so strange because I had just finished feeding, and I was so always, I go around and talk to everybody, and they're all eating, and I have Morgan horses, they don't leave hay, they do not leave.
Oh yeah.
If there's
No,
food,
my mare's a percher on Morgan. Oh, I know.
so I went out and I got all my cold gear on and I walked out and here is this horse stuck in the guard.
Wow.
And I realize it belongs to my neighbor and I don't know what to do. At this point, I'm like, there is no way we're going to get this horse out. And she was kind of stuck in parallel instead of parallel to the bars rather than over them. And I thought, well, I don't know. Um, that's an interesting way she's got stuck in there. But my neighbor came down and, down in our valley, we didn't have cell phone service at that time. And to drive to somebody's place was 15, 20 minutes. And so here I am. She goes to get help. She goes to find the owner, and I'm stuck there with the horse. And I'm thinking, gosh darn it, this doesn't end well. I've never heard it end well for a horse. Either they break their legs or they I don't know what other
Yeah.
option there is. They hurt themselves pretty badly if they try to get out. And in that space, I was thinking about the animal communication and do horses read pictures in our minds? I had thought they did based on all the time I spent on the ranch. I thought, well, that's probably how they communicate a lot and through intention and feeling and all that. And so I just started making these pictures of the horse getting out and I could see a way he could do it by jumping forward a little bit and he would be able to clear the bars and not get hurt, but I was like, there's no way, how is he going to get out? And despite the fact that now that I know that I shouldn't have put in there's no way in my thought process, I still made these pictures, and that came from my studies with sports psychology as I became really good at making internal
Mm.
pictures. And so I did that and I stood there and I just pulled the lead rope a little bit and he moved kind of like what I was picturing. And then he took this big leap and he made it out. And all he had on him was one little scrape on his back leg. And he was standing there shaking. He had been in there probably at least 8 to 10 hours.
Oh
So,
my
and it
gosh.
was so cold, and he was probably dehydrated and hungry, all those kind of things. And I remember the owner and my neighbors showed up in the truck, and they got out, and the look on their face was astonishment, disbelief. Um, and when if you've done energy work or you're in that other field, you know that look that people give you that's like, I'm not sure what to do with you now. That's so weird. What you just, like I have no explanation for what happened. And so they back away slowly. They don't say anything and they just like leave really fast because it totally blew their paradigm of what they believe in and how things are supposed to work. And I remember at that point was really a turning point, like, okay, there's there's a whole lot to this that I have yet to explore. And it drove me to again go to school after I was done, go the route where I didn't want to get the eye rolls anymore. I didn't want to get that dismissive stuff about, oh, that's not for real. It was just a coincidence. There's nothing to it. And I wanted to go in and go, I know there's an explanation. I know there is. And that's what drove me for the next 10 years probably, looking at all of that and trying to find answers so that this could be presented in a way that was credible and that people would be able to see what happens and why it happens and then be able to replicate themselves because it's based on science. It's based on what
Mm.
really occurs, not some magical thing out there, some magic fairy dust. And what I find so ironic is after I got divorced and I went and changed my name back to my maiden name, and for the life of me, I went through my entire life up to that point not knowing what my last name meant. It actually means
Oh,
fairy.
uh-huh. Yep.
Oh, I guess that's so appropriate. I must step into my fairiness, even though I don't have little fairy dust or anything like that. But um, yeah, it's I guess you can't escape your past, your ancestry. I don't know.
And your future. Yep.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Isn't it funny how life just comes around like that and goes, "Oh, just so you know, there's this thing."
Just in case you're paying attention. Oh my god.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I would love to chat about a little bit about your research because I'm always so interested in these spaces. I'm such an edge walker, right? Like, and I think that I think that I have a kindred spirit in you here, Susan, in that I love pushing on the edges and being
Mhm.
like, okay, like what's the next, like what's the next phase beyond the hillside, beyond the right, like what's over there. um and I think research is so important in that. It's such a, it's something that I shy away from, in many ways, but I think it's so crucial for a lot of people, if especially if they're a left brain thinker, to have something that they can kind of hang their hat on,
Yeah.
right? And be like, okay, there's something going on here, it's got science behind it, there's proof behind it. So what have been some of the key things that have come through the research that you've done up
Well,
until now?
I think the main ones, and I spoke about it in about maybe the second chapter where I presented that geek chapter for everybody that, that likes the science part. Uh, that really, I've always been so interested in how our brain works, how we, um, I mean, I don't think we even have an inkling of what our potential is as far as our brain and how to use it. And we're never taught anything in school about how to use the capabilities our brain has and how to do these different things. But during my time with the horses and getting into more the neuroscience and then the psychology aspect, I'm like, there's something to all of this with the connection with the horses. And people have been doing it, but not in a way that they know consciously how to direct that or make it happen. And they usually say, wow, this amazing thing happened, but I have no way to replicate it or make it happen again. And that's where I went in and go, wait, you can, because here's what's really going on. And one of them was, we're electromagnetic beings, and the gist of it is we're producing electromagnetic energy from our body, and our brain is one big electrical system up there, and our heart is electromagnetic system. And so clearly we are projecting something out into our space around us from that electrical activity, and we can measure it on scientific devices, EEGs or EKGs. They can measure all of that, and we know something's happening. And then I thought, what if the horses are picking up on what the wave of energy that's coming off of us is, and they interpret it in a certain way and get information from that. And so that's why I was looking at, okay, we change our emotional state. What happens with the horse? Does he change or does he not change? What if we have scattered thoughts and we have a lot of electrical activity in our brain because we're at a high, what we call beta brainwave, and you see the horses fleeing, or they getting spooky, or they're unsettled in some way, or that kind of thing, and you go, oh, well, they're reacting to that. Okay, so what if we start to really look at it consciously, controlling or being aware of what's going on in our own physiology and our own body at every moment. And then of course you get into meditation and that states of consciousness. I like to look at it in I've meditated before, but I don't do it. I do a walking meditation because now I know, okay, here's the brainwave state, here's what I feel like when I'm in that. So let's say if I'm producing a lot of beta brainwaves, which are the very high brainwaves that we use for doing everyday activities, talking, um, mathematics, studying, any attention thing, and we're producing a lot of those. And I realized horses don't necessarily really like to be around us when we're like that. And then as I'm
Mm-hmm.
studying the states of consciousness through hypnosis, and I went in that route to learn about states of consciousness through hypnosis, and it's like, oh, interesting. Like I'm going down to an alpha and I'm changing my breathing, and therefore my physiology is changing and my electrical activity coming off my body's changing, and the horse is getting more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But then why? What are they doing? And that's when I got into that idea of the entrainment. Entrainment is a thing where if whatever is the strongest wave in the field will cause all other waves to copy that one. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wow, do we have a lot of power here? We've got a lot of power to influence our horse's state of consciousness, its state of relaxation, and its ability to learn, because all of those things are different states of consciousness. So wow, that my research took me down those roads, and it's like, wow, now if I can do it, can I teach someone else? And that's the next step of it. And so I'm going out, and what's amazing to me is I can just tell people in another country far away, do this and this, or we're working with a horse on the screen, I can see them as we're working, and there's still the transfer of the energy, and things are still working the
Mm.
same way they do as if I'm in person, which is fascinating. Most people
I
go,
love
no,
it.
that can't work, that can't work. Yes, it does. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so
Wow. Yeah, we talk a lot about sort of distance, you know, the remote work on here because it's something that I do quite a bit. And yeah, it just works so well. It's amazing. So I'm excited to hear that you're able to do that from a distance and work with others. So, like breaking that down, because of course I'm sure a lot of people are going, okay, like what is it that she is sharing for people to do to start um, really engaging with their own physiology to help the horses. So is there some key pieces that you bring into to what you're sharing that seem to really be making a difference for horses?
yeah, and One of the things just to start with is that I never want it to be about me because I go in and go, this is the relationship between you and your horse. So
Hmm.
I'm just going to facilitate that and help you as I can. But some of the biggest things, and everything I do is super, super simple. And that's why people don't think it'll work because, I've taken these really complex ideas and made them into like, okay, we could just do this and this and this, and then it'll work perfectly. It worked beautifully. Okay. So one of the first things is the breathing. That's what I have people do. And, people's tendency is to go, wow, I've got to go find a really complex breathing technique that I know will work. No, 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 you don't. And I'm just going to say, and I always tell these people, no, it's really simple. I breathe, I check and do diaphragmatic breathing from my stomach, because most people are breathing, as we become adults, we breathe in our chest and our upper body, and that's stress breathing. And it physiologically signals to the horse to be on the alert and watch for something scary because you're telling
Hmm.
him something must be scary out there. Okay. So the very first thing, and usually this causes horses to come over just from the breathing, is like we do the diaphragmatic breathing and then we get a baseline on how many breaths per minute they usually take. And then what I do is just tell them, okay, without trying to do anything, just slow down your breath. Just tell your, and this is the beauty of the mind and working, you just have to give it a directive, slow down the breathing. And without doing anything else, they can probably shave 4 breaths per minute off of their baseline that they started with. And this is the breath is so critically important in everything that I do with the horse. That would be my first go to for anything, is that
Hmm.
especially if I'm with a super stressed horse and I want to entrain them, they can entrain to your breathing too to slow it down. And they're just really, really upset. I will slow my breath rate after practicing this for a while. If you practice it, I'm down to like between 2 breaths and 3 breaths per minute if I have a really stressed horse. And it's almost
Wow.
impossible for them to fight that um, with, keeping their breathing going fast and all that. And part of that slow breath is the fact that you take a breath in, you might pause a little at the top. And what I do when I exhale, I pause at the bottom of my breath before I take another one. And as you
Hmm.
practice this over time, I think I usually, without feeling like I'm stressed or have to take a breath, I'm about 10 seconds of nothing. No breath in, no breath out, just that space. And what's interesting about that, which gets back to the name of my book, which I didn't know. See, I always find these things afterwards, is that the Native Americans believed that that space between your breaths is the sacred space.
Wow.
I thought, wow, we're working from intuition. Here we go. There's another reason I didn't want to change the title of my book, which I didn't know at the time, because that's really where we're working. Because in that space where you breathe out and you're not doing anything, you're not thinking anything, you're not doing anything, it's that presence, it's pure presence. And
Mm.
so I think that's what the horses pick up on. It's like, I can't fight the pure presence that you're showing me right now. And which is very odd for a human being to do that for horses, because not many humans go in there and do that, right? So, the horses go, hey, you're one of us. Are you one of us? you know, um,
This is all very strange.
it
Yeah.
is. It's like you can see them. It's like what? And it's almost like they look at you a little differently because it's like that. You don't have the same energy signature as a regular person, but
Yeah.
because if you can get to this place, like horses instantaneously connect to you because they recognize that space and they want to be in that space. So it's
Mm.
really the whole connection piece is not as difficult as people try to make it, but it's more about you. It's more about what you're doing and how you're thinking and all that and where you're at. So um,
Mm. Mm.
Okay. I got on
Amazing.
the breathing thing because that's a big one.
Yeah.
There are other techniques that I use when I'm with people that really help with their horse. So we really look at. I do body scans essentially. So I will
Yep.
tell them to turn your eyes inside, look from the top of your head down through your body. Tell me everywhere you feel tension or pain or anything like that, and then I do some different things to, if they do, to breathe that out and to get that settled. And then we pick an emotional state, and that's probably the hardest for a lot of people who've been in corporate or something like that, because we don't talk about emotions and we don't put
Hmm.
focus on them. Or we know we have a bad emotion or a good emotion. There's two, we have a two. And so really with horses, it's about getting a fluency to your emotional states, and to really recognize, what am I feeling now? Where do I feel it in my body?
Hmm.
Okay. Because if you are working with a horse and we want to change emotional states to support him, we might want to go, okay, we're doing something like safety and comfort right now, but we want to switch to joy. Can you switch that fast? Can you do something like that? And the key is, if you can feel it in your body, you can get there faster. Okay, so it's really about bodily feeling. Okay, and that's what the
Mm.
horse understands, is the feeling, not the word we assign to it, but the feeling. So
Mm.
those are the two big ones. We work a little bit on, if they're scattered, but usually what'll happen if their mind is scattered and they can't focus, I'll either do a little bit of hypnosis to get them more grounded, or we'll do just the breathing, we'll get them grounded. So it's
Yeah.
really, really pretty,
Yeah.
pretty simple stuff. So.
Simple but not easy.
Simple, and that's what they say, simple but not easy. It's definitely, those are words that everybody should live by, because they think that if they talk to me and do something, then it's instantaneously going to change for them. But I didn't get there from no work. I got there from years of paying attention and studying, and knowing where I was at physically, mentally, emotionally. And it was
Mm.
hard. It was hard.
Yeah, what I'm seeing lately, even in terms of my own work with my horses, is this idea of extrinsic or intrinsic motivators, is something I've been learning more about,
Yeah,
and this idea of what I might term like people training, right?
yeah.
That a lot of what we want to actually do is train ourselves, which is what you're talking about. So training ourselves to breathe, training ourselves to be connected to every part of our body and the tension levels present in our body, be connected to what it feels like to be in a certain emotional state. And that intrinsically creates a desire of that horse to actually connect with us rather than us having to extrinsically motivate them
Exactly.
to, you must connect with me.
Which, you know
And yeah, it's so interesting. I've been in this like this emotional process this past week around this. I've been taking a new course that's a bit more in the people training category with Elsa Sinclair, and it has brought up so much in me because I realize how much I like to control the outcome and how results driven I am.
Mhm.
It's been really, really interesting. Not that I didn't know that about myself, but to
Yeah,
see the kind of extent that it drives my behavior has been quite humbling, I would say. And yeah, to kind of step back into these intrinsic, like, what's happening in my body? What's going on for me, right?
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like what you're working with the people that you're working with is really developing their skill in knowing themselves.
right,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing to be doing. And one of the things we chatted about before the podcast was some of the more recent work that you're doing, um as you've noticed, horses that have had, trauma happen in their lives. And I'd love you to share a little bit more about how this work that you're doing ties into that piece that affects so many of us in our horses.
Right. So, what I was finding when I went out there was that horses just didn't seem to have the capacity to connect with someone, and I was wondering what was going on. It was like there was static between the person and the horse, and what I was realizing was it can be trauma on both ends, but I feel like I'm more drawn to like trying to help the horse figure out theirs because I don't feel as competent at helping people with their own trauma. That's outside my area of expertise, and I would love other, I always direct people to go to somebody if they've got some things like that. But what I found with the connection piece is they would say, I've done all these things you told me to do, and the horse still won't connect. Well, when I'm going in person to these horses, I'm seeing that the reason they can't is either they've checked out, dissociated as a way to deal with their trauma or a stimulus that is overwhelming them, or they are very angry and they lash out, or they, cause a lot of resistance or something like that to doing anything. And I thought, okay,
Mm.
so in order for this relationship to work and a connection to happen, there has to be some of that has to be taken out, or there has to be a way to get this to release in the horses. And that's where I really started looking at some different ways to do that. And I believe there's other people doing it. There's some methods like people do tapping. um, they
Mhm.
can do some body work. What I ended up doing is I thought about this as far as, okay, if a horse has some kind of trauma, it will tell me in his body where it is. His body cannot lie about where
Mhm.
they store the trauma. So if I can get to speak to the body, I can find those spaces where there's held emotions. And then it was one of those things, I don't know where it came from. But I tried it one time. It's like, okay, what if I just told him he could release that if he's ready and he didn't have to hold it for anybody?
Mm.
And, it was like, well, that's simple, silly. Okay. So what I would do is I never touch a horse during an emotional or trauma release, emotional trigger point or trauma release, because I don't want to see where it's stuck in, where it's actually manifested in a physical way in the body. I want to see the whole piece of it. So what I do is I
Mhm.
usually stand about 10 feet away. I will open the bladder meridian a couple times, 3 times usually.
Yeah.
And then what I do is stand away from the horse, and I will be have my energy center away from the horse while I'm doing this. And then I'll go, okay, I'm going to go along the bladder meridian because that's the governing meridian for the entire body, and it will tell me everywhere where there's something stuck. So I'll start maybe at the pole. I'll look at a point, and then I wait for any reaction at all, any change from the baseline of that horse, and that will show me he's got an emotional trigger at that point. And then I step away and I take a breath and I ask him, if you're ready, you can let it go. And then, we go through the process. You don't have to
Mm.
hold it. And then I wait and I check myself. Am I in a space to provide comfort for this horse? Can I be neutral? Can I just be here in a kind of
Mm.
just loving way? And this process requires the horse to be quite vulnerable because they've got to look at their stuff and let it go. And it's quite
Mhm.
interesting because I've activated the nervous system by looking at that point. And if it's a trigger point for something, it will cause another reaction throughout the body. So I wait, and you'll see all sorts of things start coming up, like ticks in the horse. They'll twitch. A lot of times around the muzzle, the little muscles there will start twitching and underneath the skin, and you just wait it out. And then pretty soon they'll have a release either out the back or out the front. And then
Mhm.
it's like you'll see them through this process. They can start out pretty, stressed out or whatever. And each release, they just become more and more relaxed. And I've never touched them. And
Mm.
what I'm doing, and you're talking about extrinsic, intrinsic motivators, I'm through this process telling the horse, you know how to do this. You know how to let it go. I don't need to help you with this. I'm just going to put attention on the place that you or your body's telling me is bothering you, and then I'm going to give you permission to let it go. So I'm not manipulating the horse in any way, and I never want to get into the place where I'm doing it for them. It's got to be their entire decision. Um,
Mm,
but you'll see after this, I've done these things, and I, as a scientist, I'm always looking for, wow, that seems like kind of out there. And what are the end results of these these emotional trigger point releases and everything? Well, it's very interesting as the horse doesn't have the same issues. Let's say there's some emotional trigger points around the pole and somewhere in the head, and you're bridling it, and every time you try to do that, the horse looks away, just barely looks away, or he steps away, or he throws his head up in the air. And what is the usual way we try to fix that is like, that's a behavioral issue that needs to be dealt with. And here's what you do. And you make him do this, and then you move his feet around, and then and then, yeah, then
mm,
the horse
mm,
checks out and goes, okay, I just have to endure this somehow. On the other hand, what I'm trying to do is go, wow, I recognize you've got something there. Let's see if you want to let that go, because it's going to be different now. And when I do this with people, there was one lady that she hadn't been able to bridle or saddle her horse for 4 years since she had her, where the horse didn't turn around, try to bite her, move away, just be completely nasty about the whole process. And I checked to make sure there wasn't physical. We made sure we didn't have any physical issues. And so we did this process on the horse, and it took us an hour.
mm,
And there's some other aspects of it that I do during the process, but at the end of an hour, the horse was quiet and let us bridle, saddle, cinch up, everything without biting, without turning around, without moving her feet. And the girl was like, she was beaming. I mean, she's like, I didn't think this was possible. And it's those kind of things that go, okay, another bit of evidence that what this does work.
mm,
You know, so yeah, that's why I'm really drawn to all of this part of, releasing these trapped emotions in the horses. And, there's emotion code, there's all these other ways to
mhm,
do it
mhm,
that to me are, and not to put those down in any way, but I'm the one that goes for the easiest, simplest route. Like, how do we do this? So some of these are kind of tedious in the process, and it takes some time, and you got to do all this muscle testing and on your part and the part, and I'm like,
mhm,
oh, no, it doesn't need to be that hard. It can be this simple. It can be this simple. And that's hopefully not blowing everybody's programs that do it the other way. And there's people that want to have it be hard too, and they can go and do harder ways, and they're still going to get the same results. It's just it feeds their need for hard. you
mm.
know And
It can.
I'm one of those, like, let's just figure out how to do this really easy. Okay, should be this and this. Okay, we're done. you know
Mhm,
but it
mhm,
does take, when I do that, it does take support, ongoing support for the person, not to trigger the horse back into the old patterns and all that. So there's some other follow up things that need to be done so that it sticks, and they don't have problems after that. But yeah, I'm seeing horses that just do a big turnaround on just doing that, and then the
mm.
relationship changes because
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of a two-part system. When you're helping the horse release something, he's going, wow, you helped me. And then it builds that bond and that trust. And the fact that you're not making him do it is part of the trust piece also, because you're saying,
Mm,
"Hey, I'm here for you, but you could let it go if you want, but I'm here," you know. And I just seeing like the horses at the end of it will often turn around and like come up to the person, or they'll start getting into the process like, I got to point back here, and they position their body over there, so that's the next one. But it's all for the horse's doing. It's all intrinsic on the horse's part. He doesn't We're not doing anything for him, and it's building
yeah.
confidence, it's building all these different things. So that's the
Mm,
gist of that one. There's some
mm,
complicated neurological things that are going on that it would take me forever to explain, but based on, like I say, I take those
mhm.
complex things, make them easy, and then let's put them into practical use. So
It's so fascinating too, Susan, because what I'm seeing here is that that term sacred space comes in yet again in this practice. right? Because, um, I remember when I was first starting doing, more healing work and things, and some very bright, wise person said, "You're not doing anything. The horse is already whole. You are just holding the space that is necessary to reintegrate towards that wholeness. All you're there to do is to witness the wholeness and the love and the essence of that being." And I was like, wow, okay. And it really changed so much for the way that I practice, because it's really easy to jump on, I got to fix this thing,
Right.
or I got to make this better, or there's something broken about
Right.
myself or my horse. And so I'm loving this sense of just being there, holding space,
Right. Right.
and just letting it unfold the way it needs to unfold in the way that that horse needs to do it.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think
Mm.
what's really important is people start to get into this. The questions I get, well, they're saying, well, how do I do energy work? And I'm like, you don't do energy work. You are energy. You are. It's just how you direct it, how you're conscious of it, what you're consciously emitting out there into the field of the energy all around us. Is That's what you're doing in energy work. Nothing more than that. Nothing more than being aware. And you're never, like you're saying, you're never coming up with, oh, I've got to fix this and this is what it needs and this is what I should do. Never. Never do that. I'm like, it's always
Mhm.
the choice of whoever, whatever I'm working on it to make those choices.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a, you know, recognizing the harm that comes from seeing something as broken or
Mhm.
someone.
Right.
Um yeah, it never takes you to where you want to go when that's happening.
Right.
So, mm,
Yeah.
how beautiful. And I wanted to touch back in, my geeky self wanted to touch back in,
Yes.
because you said before you start doing the emotional trigger work, you start by doing the bladder meridian. Do you do that, Susan, sort of away from the body as well, or just in the field typically?
I can do it either way. If I'm doing it remotely, of course, I'm doing it from quite a distance. I will play it by ear. There's Every horse is different. Some of them I feel like I need to do it like hands on, and I will
Mhm.
go that way. And others I feel like, especially if they're really shut down or it just feels like I would just overstimulate them by going,
Yep.
here, I'm putting my hands here and I'm talking to you. It's like those close talkers get in your face and it's like, I'm going to tell you this stuff whether you want to hear it or not, and you're backing away. And so I'm always kind of gauging, where do I want to be, how far away, what do I want to do,
Mm,
um,
mm.
how much can he take? And a lot of times, um, just the bladder meridian, I want the horse to be able to come and go, and so they'll often leave just after the bladder meridian and go, wow, that was a introduction to something that I hadn't felt, and I don't know what to do with that, and so they go away, and then the person goes, well, wait, they left. What are we going to do the rest of the session? I'm like, I'm pretty sure he'll be back. And as I
Yep.
say that, they turn around and come back and go, okay, all right, now I know what you're doing. And even so, I very rarely, even on my when I do trigger points, I'll only do a couple at a time because it's
Yep.
so invasive. We have no idea what level of energy we're projecting out there. Even if I talk about dials sometimes. I'm dialed down to the lowest setting I can think of, like trying to keep all of that stuff inside of me, and it's still going to affect a horse. I mean, it's still going to affect them. So I'm very cautious of like how much I project onto
Mm.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember back to when I was first becoming an equine sport therapist, and I had no idea how to work with my energy. And it was like an 11 out of 10. And I would go out to work on horses and they would just like walk away from like every horse. Like I'd put my hand up to go to massage. They're like, there's no way. There's no way you're gonna touch me. And I like, it took it pretty personally with that. I
Yeah,
was like, "Oh, got it. Okay, yeah. Like, this is" it was so dialed up. And yeah, it's been this lifetime mission of, like, just take it down. And, I'm gonna pull in that breathing piece because I haven't been doing the pausing.
okay.
And I think that that's gonna be really powerful, for myself and a lot of my listeners to start to play with that tool
Oh,
more of doing the pauses. Yeah,
yeah, it's
and really starting to slow down the breath. Yeah.
yeah, because it's hard for us to work fast if we're slow breathing, you know? So, a
Oh,
lot of people it's funny how people have got a speed and they go fast, everything they do with the horse, and I'll go, "Okay, just slow down," and they go a little slower, and I'm like, "No, slow." It's like, but we'll not get anything done. Oh, yes, you'll get a lot done. Even though you're going slow, you get a lot more done. It's really not
yeah.
really the speed at which your body is moving as much as the speed at which your brain and your energy and everything inside you is moving, you know? So,
Mm.
being able to kinda just slow down internally is really great. It's
Well, and if we watch a horse like really kind of doing their thing, generally they're so slow. I mean, they
yeah,
have moments of, like, woohoo.
yeah,
But you look out, you're like, oh, they're just so content, just little grazing around the field, step every,
yeah,
minute or so, just,
yeah,
and yeah, it's such a different pace, but it's so beautiful to drop into that. I mean, what a brilliant plan to have these amazing animals that just require us to completely slow our roll, just
right,
just like take it down in this fast-paced world. What a
right.
gift.
Exactly,
Mm,
exactly. And maybe just to
mm,
comment on that one, which I thought was interesting, because I was thinking about horses through history and how more than probably any other animal ever, they've been our partners. And we haven't been so good to them as a partner, but through war, through working, through all these different roles that they've played throughout history in our lives, and looking at them now, going, wow, you have just walked into every role and done it brilliantly. And here's their new role is helping us slow down, helping us be again helping mankind in some amazing way. And what versatility there is in a horse. I mean,
yeah.
like I said, there's no other animal that I know of that could do as many different things as horses have done for us throughout history. And maybe this is our payback to them finally going, "Okay, we'll listen to you now. You are the
Yeah.
wisdom keepers. You know how this works. Show us. Help us."
Yeah. Yeah. I truly I see this turning of a tide. I hope I'm seeing that
Yeah,
of, us slowing down enough to go, "Oh, wow. There's something so important here."
right.
For us to be present to and to learn from. And I hope you're seeing that too out in your world. It sounds like,
I I am, and a lot of the things I do are very nuanced. They're very slow. They're very quiet, and that's not been what's been out in the horsemanship world, where the person that gets the attention is the one that is so there's all this drama around all the horse and the drama and then there's a resolution at some point. But with mine, it never escalates. There's just this kind of quiet place, and I thought for a long time, nobody will listen, because this is stuff that you really have to pay attention to. You have your role in it, the horse has his role. Are people going to be receptive? And what's funny at my clinics, of all the things that I do, when I started doing more of the emotional trigger releases, it's so quiet, and they have to watch every little thing on the horse and just watch every movement and everything. And I thought, oh, this is like watching paint dry. But people, it's so funny, if there's auditors or somebody, and I bring in one horse, we do it, and then I go, okay, what would you guys like to do on this next horse, or us, the owner? And they all go, we want to do another one of those. And they do them for 3 days straight, just that. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful because they're having to be so present and observant and aware, and they're seeing these amazing things happen in the process of that that you can't put a value on,
Mm,
and they
mm,
are slowing down, and they're seeing this, and they're like, they'll tell me, this is what I want to do. I decided after watching this is what I want to do. And isn't that great? you
mm.
know and it's like, you can
Beautiful.
do it. It's not that hard. But unless, you have to work on yourself a little bit, of course. But yeah, the process of it is not hard. um
Mm,
but yeah, I'm hoping for that same kind of uh change, because I'm hearing it from the people I run into going, we didn't quite feel right this other way, and this feels better somehow,
yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and that's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It sure is.
Yeah.
It's been just a pleasure chatting with you,
Oh,
Susan.
it's
We're
fabulous.
we're nearing the end of our conversation, which
I
is
I
crazy.
know. Who could have thought? That's what's so funny. Everything I do, it is like we go, "Wow, we're doing this slow work, and are we at about 15 minutes?" They go, "No, you're at an hour." I'm like, "Oh, well, huh, okay." Oh,
I love it.
yeah.
It's been a real honor and a pleasure to speak with you today, and
Oh, thank you.
and yeah, thanks for your work.
Oh, and thank you for spreading
Mm.
the word, and thank you for the work you do. I mean, we're all in this together making the change, I think. So,
I do believe so. I do believe so. I think there's so many heart-centered folks that are just like, okay, horses have had it pretty rough, and we want to make a change here. So I'm grateful to you, yeah,
yeah.
for being here. And I'd love to hear how do people connect with you? How do they find your book and connect with you, Susan?
My book is on Amazon, the only place I have right now where you can get it on Amazon. And then I've got a Facebook group, which is really fun because we share the experiences of everybody doing this.
Mm,
And that is called Sacred Spaces / Sacred Wisdom. So you can look that up on Facebook. And I'm working on my website. I haven't gotten that done yet. So really, that's the easiest way. Or you can email me at Dr. Susan Fay at gmail.com. And that's just Dr. Susan, SUSANFAY at Gmail.
perfect. Wonderful. And I'll include all those links, everybody, at the wholehorse.ca website
Oh,
for you. So you can check it out there.
thank you
Yay,
so much.
perfect. You are so welcome. It's this conversation has put a big smile on my face, and I've got a few things I want to try with my girls later
Oh,
on. So I appreciate that.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Wonderful. Yay, good. So thank you for being here, Susan, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. I always appreciate you listening, and I'll be back soon with more amazing guests. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. I'm excited to share that I have opened the registration for the Whole Horse Apprenticeship for 2021 starting September 15th. So if that's something that's been on your mind, on your heart, and something that interests you, you can check it out. I've included the link in the resources, or you can go to alexalinton.com/apprenticeship-2021 to find out more. All right. Wishing you all so well and looking forward to connecting more and more over the coming months.